Hey, mister, want to have some fun with me? After a long meeting with clients, on my way back from a late dinner at a pub, I was approached in a busy downtown area. The one who approached me was a high school girl with dirty blonde hair, roots showing her original brown hair, wearing a short skirt. No, I'm not into that kind of thing. I have a wife married 2 years ago. And I've been faithful to her. Moreover, this girl was clearly underage. I wanted to leave quickly before getting involved in any trouble, but I see. The girl's disappointed and anxious expression caught my attention. I hesitated a bit but returned to where the girl was standing. Why are you doing something like this? I don't have any money. I ran away from home. If I could get some money and a place to stay for tonight, that would help, but if it's not, that's fine. Her face still looked anxious, and she didn't seem enthusiastic about the kind of work she was about to get involved in. Ran away from home. You should go back. It's dangerous around here. If you keep approaching people like this, you'll regret it later, won't you? I can tell from your expression. Her expression clouded even more. She absolutely didn't want to do this. But I can't go back. I came from the countryside of Pennsylvania. There are no rails left for today. I was worried about her. There are many bad adults in this city of New York. If she stood here all night, she might have been caught by them and got hurt badly. I'm hungry, she muttered to herself. Unable to go back home, no money, starving and nowhere to stay. I felt sorry for the girl. I didn't want to do anything that would betray my wife, but I couldn't just leave her like this, so I decided to call my wife. I told her that there's a runaway girl in the downtown area and I couldn't just leave her. As a decent adult, I felt I should help her. Cell phones were not yet widespread at that time. My wife was first surprised at my words over the public telephone, but eventually accepted my suggestion. I told the girl, "If you have nowhere to stay, you can come to our place. Oh, and to make sure I have a wife, so I don't mean it in a weird way." Really? Is it okay?
Yeah.
I took the girl home with me. I had told my wife not to make dinner today, so there shouldn't have any food at home. So, on the way home, we stopped at a convenience store and bought a sandwich for her. As we walked, I asked her name and she introduced herself as Sarah. I was curious about why she had run away from home but thought it would be easier for her to talk to my wife than me, so I walked silently back home with her. When we got home, my wife, who was getting ready for bed, greeted us. She didn't show any displeasure at the sudden guest and heated up the meal, then poured a drink for Sarah. "It's cold outside, isn't it? Have some tea and warm up." "Thank you." While Sarah was eating her meal, I quickly took a bath. When I got out of the bath, the meal had been neatly finished, and Sarah's expression seemed a bit more relaxed than just now. "Sarah, you ran away from home, right?" my wife said. "Why did you run away? As a gratitude for a meal and a place to stay, would you tell us if it's fine?" When asked for a favor in return for a meal and a place to stay, Sarah couldn't refuse. With a slightly tense expression, Sarah cautiously replied, "Yes." She began to explain why she had run away from her rural hometown in south of Pennsylvania. "I had a quarrel with my parents about my hair. At my school, hair dye is prohibited, and I'm the only one with hair like this. Teachers and my parents were really angry. So, I had a huge fight with my parents and left home." "Why don't you just go back and fix it?" I said. "You can dye your hair any color you want after you graduate, right?" "No." "Why not?" Sarah began to tell the story behind her dyed hair. She had a friend named Amy. They met at school, where Amy was the only one with brightly dyed hair, dressed like a delinquent in a short skirt, and kept her distance from everyone. I was one of those who were scared of Amy at first. This was when my hair was still brown. But we were paired together during a gym class, and when I talked to her, I realized she didn't seem like a bad person. Sarah and Amy became close friends. As they grew closer, Amy opened up about her childhood. Amy's mother was a woman who had many relationships, and since Amy was young, Her mother had been through several marriages and divorces. Each time her mother married or divorced a new man, they moved, and Amy had to transfer schools. Rumors spread that Amy didn't share the same blood as her father, and this became the subject of ridicule by other children. Amy was often bullied at her new schools and didn't make any friends. However, when she became a teenager and started coloring her hair to bright colors and dressing like a delinquent, nobody bullied Amy anymore. Bullies only pick on those who seem weaker than them. They won't choose someone like me who looks like a troublemaker and might fight back, Amy told Sarah. It's nonsense, but I've been dressing like this ever since. Even though I haven't done anything bad, I'm treated as a delinquent and everyone is scared of me. As Amy said, she looked lonely to Sarah. Amy was frequently scolded by teachers because of her hair, and whenever there was trouble at school, she was the first to be suspected. There were many disadvantages to having dyed hair. But Amy didn't dye her hair back to its original color. If she changed her hair back and became a good girl who followed the school rules, she would surely be bullied again. It was probably a threat for Amy to be bullied than to be scolded by teachers. Amy was protecting herself, all alone. To Sarah, Amy seemed pitiful and also mentally strong and cool. Amy, I'll dye my hair too. That way, even if everyone is scared of us and the teachers scold us, we won't be alone, right? So, Sarah dyed her hair and shortened her skirt like Amy. My parents and teachers were shocked and angry, but I didn't care. As long as I had Amy, I wasn't scared, and my dyed hair was proof of our strong bond. Sarah showed a faint smile for the first time. But... Suddenly, Sarah's expression darkened. About a week ago, Amy and her mom disappeared. I don't know if something happened with her current dad, but they vanished overnight without saying a word to me. From then on, Sarah was the only one who received prejudiced stares at school and scolded by teachers. This hair represents the strong bond between Amy and me. It's the only memory I have with her. That's why she had a quarrel with her parents and left home. I remembered that Amy mentioned having a relative in New York, so I thought maybe she was here. But then I realized I don't know the relative's name or where they live. Such a reckless act. I said. Yeah, but I won't go home until I find Amy. Oh, but I'll leave your house tomorrow, so don't worry. Sarah said strongly she would find a part-time job or anything to support herself. No. That's impossible. My wife, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. Sarah, would you like me to tell your fortune and see if you'll meet your friend? Actually, I come from a family of famous fortune tellers in my hometown. Our family has inherited the ability to see the future for generations. I was surprised by her sudden suggestion. However, I noticed my wife's nostrils flaring slightly. This was her habit when she lied. But Sarah seemed to believe her lie. Really? Yes, really. My wife replied with a confident smile. Then, please do. All right. Let me see. My wife closed her eyes and wrapped both hands around Sarah's. After a few seconds, she slowly opened her eyes. You will definitely meet your friend, she said. But not until you're an adult. Not until I'm an adult? Yes. Your bond with her is not broken. So, don't rush. When you become an adult, you'll be able to find her on your own. As long as you keep believing that your place is by her side, you'll always be moving towards her. Really? That's true, isn't it? I knew it. Coming to New York alone will not help me search for Amy. I understand, Sarah said in a disheartened voice. I'll go home tomorrow. After Sarah went to bed. I can't believe you came up with such a lie, I said to my wife. Actually, half of it is true. The part about coming from a famous family of fortune tellers is real. The part about having the power to see the future is a lie. But my late grandmother seemed to have a little bit of that power. Really? I didn't know that. My wife smiled. And said, Would you like me to tell your fortune too? I thought fortune telling was a lie. It is. But does it matter? My wife took my hand, wrapped both of her hands around it, closed her eyes, and then opened them a few seconds later. You'll definitely reach the place where you're meant to be, she said. I realized she was talking about my job. I had just recently told her about the trouble I was having with my boss at work. My boss was a self-centered person who didn't care about the problems he caused for others, and I couldn't help but speak up, which led to constant arguments. The day I complained about my boss. I think you're suited to be a business owner than working under someone, my wife had said before. With that thought in mind, I went to sleep. The next day, I saw Sarah off as she boarded the train to Pennsylvania, and then I headed to work. For a while, the usual arguments with my boss continued, but after about a month, I was suddenly given a notice of transfer. The new department was a so-called banishment department within the company. It means that I was useless at the company. With that in mind, I couldn't maintain my motivation anymore. My wife said, "Why don't you just quit? I'm working too." Encouraged by her words, I handed in my resignation and left the company. A few days later, intending to job hunt, I found myself heading to my parents' home instead of the unemployment office. My parents owned a small bakery. However, I had no interest in working at the bakery and wanted a bigger job since I was a child. So, during my job search, I never considered taking over the family business and only applied to famous companies. The big job I had acquired ended up like this. The moment I saw the nostalgic sign of my parents' bakery, I remembered my wife's words, "I think you're suited to be a business owner." I stopped for a moment. It's strange. Maybe I've grown up a little. Now, I feel like taking over the bakery might not be so bad. I went into the bakery and greeted my father, who came out with freshly baked bread. It's been a while. Hey, Dad. Can I start training to take over the bakery from now? My father was surprised, but when I told him I had quit my job, "Your wife will be worried if you're unemployed," and accepted my apprenticeship. When I started working at my father's bakery, I soon realized that it was not an easy job as I had thought. Somewhere in my heart, I thought, working at a bakery is a trivial job. However, it was not an easy job at all. Baking bread was hard work, and a slight difference in the process changed the taste. I couldn't display my failed bread in the store, so I brought it home and ate it with my wife. My wife said, "It's not bad, but it was nowhere near as good as my father's," and I admired him again at this age. After I started taking the bakery job seriously, I attended a cooking school. After graduating a year later and focusing on the bakery work for a while, my bread finally made it onto the store's shelves. Not long after, my father retired. I became the owner of a small bakery. I introduced new menus, renovated the store, and aimed to increase its popularity. As I planned, the store gradually became popular through word of mouth, and young customers that we hadn't seen before increased. Now, my wife has also quit her job and helps out at the bakery, but we're short of staff members, so I decided to hire part-time workers. 3 people applied for the job, and during the interview with the last one, a college girl with curly black hair said suddenly, "Do you remember me?" She suddenly asked. "I ran away from home to New York when I was in high school and stayed at your house." I hurriedly looked at her resume, and there, under the first name, was Sarah. "Sarah, could it be the same Sarah from back then?" "Yes." Sarah had grown up and looked much more mature now. The somewhat dangerous and sharp atmosphere she had back then had disappeared, and now she looked like a well-rounded college student. "Now I'm a college student in New York. I happened to pass by your bakery a while ago, and I saw your face through the window. I thought it must be you. I recognized your wife too, so I was sure it was you." "Wow, it's been a long time. So, you've been doing well, huh?" Being a college student meant that she had attended high school and managed to avoid going down the wrong path. "Thank you so much for everything you did for me back then. I owe who I am today to the 2 of you for setting me straight at that time. I really appreciate it." Sarah bowed politely and said, I wanted to help out at the bakery to thank you for what you did for me back then. Of course, you are more than welcome. I immediately told Sarah she was hired. And then, I asked her a question I'd been worrying about. By the way, did you ever find the friend you were looking for back then? No. Sarah sadly shook her head. But I still believe that one day I'll see Amy again. Your wife told me back then that I would definitely meet her once I became an adult. That's why I decided to become an adult as quickly as possible so I could see Amy. I see. Well, keep believing. My wife's predictions tend to be accurate. Of course, my wife's predictions were fake. But, she told me back then. You'll definitely find where you're meant to be. And now, here I am. I have a fulfilling job, and I've been reunited with the high school girl we helped back then, who is now doing well. Isn't this the place I'm meant to be? Yes, I'll keep believing. Sarah nodded energetically. After that, Sarah worked at our bakery until she graduated from college and found a job. Even after she stopped working for us, we kept in touch with her. At first, we communicated by phone, but that quickly changed to email. A few years later, we received a message from Sarah. I've finally found Amy! It turned out that Amy was the wife of one of Sarah's coworkers. When Sarah saw a photo of their newborn child, she noticed that the mother in the picture resembled Amy. She couldn't believe it, so she asked the coworker more about her past and found out she had lost touch with a friend in high school. When I saw the photo of Amy as a mother, I remembered your wife's words from back then. You'll meet her once you're an adult. I believed in those words and waited, and I'm glad I did because I was able to see Amy so happy. The two friends who had been reunited started nurturing their friendship again, cherishing the time they had been apart. My wife and I conspired and replied to Sarah. My wife predicted your future again. She says your friendship will last forever. I hope this prediction comes true as well. As I prayed holding my cell phone, my wife and I looked each other